musachaka muridzo miridzo yezanu iyo miridzo yezanu iyi izere umbavha tiendeke nani miridzo yezanu iyo izere urombo naiva chamisa mushingambo tiri kuenda tipindeke nani umbavha upere tipindeke nani umba upere tipindeke nani umbavha upere tipindeke nani upere.
Thank you so much for taking your time to join us live right here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Great. I understand you are still fresh out of prison, and a total of 8 to 10 years has been given unto you, and finally you are out. Just before we jump into the details that cause you incarceration, how did you feel about you being finally acquitted of this crime and going back home?
When I received the message of my acquittal and that I was about to be released from the prison, I was very happy. I was excited. I was full of joy and happiness.
Were you in the court when the judgment was announced, or you were not physically in the court?
We did not physically attend the court session. We were in prison. So we had it when we were in prison, where it started unofficially. So at first we couldn't believe, because we were just getting it unofficially that guys, you have been acquitted.
And I know your lawyers have been appealing over almost 10 years over this matter, and you could not always be present in the court, if I'm right.
Well, when it's an appeal, we do not necessarily need to be physically present. It's up to the discretion of the court. So in this particular instance, we were not there. The lawyers were representing us.
Well, let's get to the story, Mr. Maengahama. I understand that the biggest story is you were arrested on allegations that you were behind the torture, if not the killing of a police officer in Glenview. Can you narrate to us exactly what transpired to the point where you were then picked up by the police officers?
Well, on 29 May 2011, that is when the incident occurred. Personally, I spent the whole day in HH service at UFIC. Then when I came back from church service, I just heard through rumor that there were disturbances at the shopping centers near my home. So it has been alleged that the disturbance that took place there were some members of the MDC who were there wearing T-shirts, who were part of the bigger public. So the members of the police learned that they did not know who was there and who was not there. So they just decided to go around, pick and arrest the non-MDC members of that area. And my house is just 100 meters from the scene of crime, and I was the first one to be arrested because I'm the former councillor for that area. So I'm the most known person in that place. So they just arrested me on the basis that I'm the former councillor for that area, because they were just looking for MDC tags.
What was the actual crime that occurred on that day?
Well, a police officer died after they had some skirmishes and some running battles with members of the public.
Was it a demonstration? Was it were they attacking people? Exactly what led to the police officers being attacked? Just for the purpose of understanding.
Well, according to people who were there, who were giving their evidence in court, it was said that the police arrived at Glenview 3 shopping center. It's a crowded place, so there were various people patronizing the place, and the public would not know who exactly was the target of the police. So the police ended up dispersing everyone who was there at the shopping center and in the nearby nightclub. So according to the evidence which was being laid in the court, it is alleged that the police ordered some of the people who were in a nightclub to disperse, and they requested to finish their bride, then they could disperse. So it is said that then the police refused to allow them to finish their bride. That's when the disagreement arose, and then it led to the death of a police officer.
Around what time was this?
It is said it was in the afternoon.
Okay. So these people were in the bar during the afternoon time?
They were drinking. It actually happened inside the bar.
Mm-hmm. Right. One of the most disturbing incidents that we have had is you were actually exonerated by a recording that came from UFI Church that said that you were not even there on the date. You were actually attending a church service, and there was a video recording that was sent to prove your absence from the case. Can you confirm this is a matter of fact?
Yes, my church provided a video to confirm that on the very day I was attending a church service. Not only that, the Econet also provided the call history of my phone to indicate that the base stations that were being picked by my phone at that particular time were away from the scene of the crime. Not only that, the people whom I heard when I went to church also came and testified that I was not present when this crime was committed.
With such overwhelming evidence, you were still not let off the hook. So what's going on? What was the argument from the state?
Well, the matter was politicized from the word-go, so they wanted to extract much capital, political capital from it. They were not interested in finding out who committed the crime. They were just trying to find a way of linking it to MDC, so that they would then use it, run with it, and they have some political expedients describing MDC as a violent party that has killed a police officer. So that's the narrative that they were trying to get, which is why they nailed people like us who had nothing to do with the commission of the crime.
Were you accused number 1, 2, or you were an accomplice in this matter?
I was accused number 4, but I was the first one to be arrested. And normally I was supposed to be accused number 1, because I was the first one to be arrested. But the reason why I did not become accused number 1 is because initially at the police station, they discovered that I had no link to the commission of the crime, so I was included amongst the group of people who were to be released at the police station. But when their seniors arrived, then they say, how can you release last Maengahama? These are the senior members of the MDC, so if you release that one, you are making our case weak. So it was from an instruction from above, not necessarily from what they had investigated.
By above, do you have an idea where exactly these guys were coming from? Which office? Was it a local police station? Was it from Central? Or do you have an idea exactly where they were from, or probably maybe where they were taking the orders from, any one of those?
Well, I cannot say precisely which office, but it was coming from above.
Right, so 4 of you were initially taken into custody over this crime, and I also understood that one of the lady who was amongst those who were rounded up did not manage to make it. She passed on. Can you give us details towards this issue?
Well, it's unfortunately one of our co-accused, Rebecca Mafuken, died in prison. She was in prison when she died. She fell sick, and our prison system and our health delivery system in this country is very poor. So she died because of the health delivery system we have in prison and we have in our country. If she was not in custody, I'm very sure we would have been having here right now.
Was there any actual known of cause of the death to her?
Well, I was in custody when she died and she was buried, so I did not have the specific details because I was inside the prison. Unfortunately, we could not even attend her funeral.
How long had she stayed in the prison before she passed away?
Well, I think it's around 2-3 years. We are not really sure about the specific, but somewhere there it was in our early years of imprisonment.
we seem to know the stories of these three. Who was the fourth person? I meant to get any information about the fourth person who was also arrested or detained with you.
Actually, initially, we were 29. We were arrested, we were 29. Then during the process and during the trial, some were dropped. So we end up when we were 7. Then from the 7 of us, 3 were then acquitted. Then the 4 of us, we were then found guilty. That is Tungamira Manzokere, last Maengahama, Yvonne Sarurwa, and Phineas Natalipa. These are the 4 people who were eventually found guilty. And Phineas Natalipa was found guilty for a lesser offense of assisting or conspiracy to public violence. So he was just fined $500. Yes, and he went out. Then Yvonne Sarurwa, he was sentenced 20 years, the same with us. But on 2018, there was a presidential amnesty, and she was released on presidential amnesty. Yes.
Okay. So that then left the 2 of you, and Rebecca Pasdos didn't make it.
Yes, Rebecca died before even our sentencing. Yes.
What was the interest? If I'm to understand, you were only acquitted in the Supreme Court, which meant that this case was escalated all the way from the Magistrate Court, High Court, up until the Supreme Court. Did they give any convincing reasons which you probably saw, maybe, even though beyond reasonable doubt, that they made sense for them to continuously have you behind bars? Why was the state continuously charging you to be guilty on such circumstances, according to your understanding?
There is no reason to talk about. It was purely political harassment. It was political persecution. They just wanted to send a message to all people like us who were perceived as opponents of the government, that if you continue doing that, you go the same way as these guys. So we used a sacrificial lamb for them to demonstrate and flex their muscles to people whom they perceived as their opponent.
You did almost 8 years in the prison. How was the experience for you? I know this is a place that you've not been used to. You are getting there. If you can just share with us some of the experiences that you had in there.
Prison is not a place to be. It has been a painful and a difficult experience to be in prison. You know, you cannot spend all those years caged like a bird. You know, and where's our prison system? They are dilapidated. The facilities are not able to cater for the inmates. So all challenges that we face as a country, they are even worse or multiplied in a prison. So you talk about water, you talk about clothing, you talk about blankets, you talk about where to sleep, and so on. So it's all suffering. It's intense suffering in prison. And to be isolated from your loved ones, from your kids, from your family and your colleagues, that's the most psychologically torturing aspect of it.
Did you have any moments where you were physically abused, beaten up, or tortured while you were in prison?
In prison, not necessarily, but when I was in police custody, yes, I was beaten several times. I was tortured several times.
How did they do this?
Well, when I was arrested, I was forcibly taken from my home. And then I was taken to Harare Central Police Station. We were taken into a certain big room where we've been interrogated, and then they were beating us in the process of interrogating us. Then during the night, we would be deployed to various police stations. And I was deployed to Matapi police station. Then during the night, some unknown police officer entered the cell, and they thoroughly beat me, saying, who is that?
Only
guy?
you, no one else, just
No one
you,
else,
specifically you.
Specifically, when they were angry that I had killed one of them. So I was thoroughly beaten in that Matapi police station. Yeah. Then in prison we were not necessarily facing the physical violence, but the psychological torture, in the sense that when you are a political prisoner, you are being treated as a high-risk criminal. So the restrictions, the security measures, the suspicions around you and so on is too much. You are like a terrorist when they see you. So it's very torturing psychologically.
Sorry, just to take you back, I know this is not the best of the moments. You were then beaten up at Mbare Matapi police station, which was an obvious violation of human rights. How exactly were they doing this to you? And did you have any other places where you were beaten and using what, as far as the police custody process is concerned?
Well, our police, our state institutions, they don't respect the rights of people. So they just beat us, just like that.
What were they using exactly, in which part of the body?
Well, they were using fist, hands, and everything. They are part of Steve. I actually ended up, one of my tooth was shaking, and eventually it was actually removed when I was in prison.
Right, Ms. Maengahama, 8 years you were in a cell. Just before we quickly conclude, let me just take you to another emotional escapade. You come out from the prison, and you still find your place, your home, and more importantly, your wife, she's still there. I understand that we have also learned of a sad development that happened to your colleague. How did your wife hold on during this time, and how often would she come and see and visit you?
Well, the marriage institution was never meant that people have to be separated physically. That is not an ideal situation, a marriage situation. So when you are physically separated from each other for those years, usually the target is to try and attack the marriage institution. So that is why you see at the end of the day, my colleague faced what he faced. So in a way, the marriages of prisoners will be weakened one way or the other.
Definitely.
Yeah.
How did you manage to get yours intact over that period of time?
Well, it is by the grace of God. That's all I can say. Yeah.
And how often did your wife and your family used to come and see? I know after such a very long time, I just need to understand the trends of how often they used to come and see you, and if there were any restrictions to them as far as the visits are concerned.
Well, generally, if I convicted prisoners, you are allowed a visitor after every 2 weeks. So that is the norm. Although sometimes there could be exceptions, but the rule is that after every 2 weeks, that's when you are allowed a visitor. It's unlike a remand prisoner, that one who is not yet convicted, you can be visited every day. But for us, it's once every 2 weeks. So they would come here and there. Yeah, that's what has been happening.
Right. The biggest issue that is doing rounds right now, Ms. Maengahama, is you have lost 8 years of your life. Surely that's a major prejudice that you have suffered as a Zimbabwean. Are you going to be looking into any potential lawsuit against the government, state to be more precise, or any particular officers that are involved in the incarceration?
Yes, we are still discussing with our lawyers, but the indications are that we are likely to sue the state for what they did to us, because it was unwarranted. We were innocent from the very day. It was a miscarriage of justice for them to detain us for 10 years only to tell us that we are innocent. So we are likely to take some actions against the state, and our lawyers are working on that.
Yeah, sorry to try and dig at the if we are news people, we work with figures. Do you have anything in your head specifically, monetarily? What would you be claiming if you can quantify it, and in dollar terms?
Well, I think that is a domain of the legal minds. They really know how it should be calculated and so on. So I will leave it to them to deal with that. Yes. After all, it's not about the amount.
Yeah.
You see, it's not about the amount, it's not about the monetary value, because no amount of money will repay what we lost. We are just sending a message that the state should be responsible. We do not want other people to be victims and follow the path we followed. That is what we are suing them. So we are not necessarily suing them because we want money. That money is not very important to us, but to send a political message that the state is there to protect its citizens, and the justice delivery system is there to deliver justice, not to the injustice to the extent that we faced.
We've witnessed many cases where even the law now allows individuals to sue the state and also the state actors in their personal capacity. Is that a consideration that you're also doing, specifically on your case where it was known and proven that you were not on the place of the act of commitment of the crime? Are you also going to be taking the same route of suing in personal capacity? We are only suing a state which is liable.
We are suing the state, and we are also looking at certain individuals who are liable in their capacity as individuals. Like in my case, we have a police constable at that time who lied, testified in court that he saw me when he was actually lying. So it was that evidence of his lies that was used to convict me. So that person must be liable, because he allowed himself to be used by the state, but he has to be liable as a person. So it's something that we are going to consider.
Interesting. Let's just quickly wrap it up. Ms. Maengahama, you are now out. Technically, your life has been restored back to you. The question is, what next? Are you still going to be considering a political career going forward after this, or you're going to call it back for now? Zimbabweans need to know, what is your next move after this?
Well, I am a politician, and I believe that to me, politics is a calling. It's in my blood. So politics is me. I don't see anything that can take away me from politics. Prison has actually failed to take me away from politics. So I'm a politician until I go to Glen. So I'm now more determined and more resolute and more committed to make sure that we bring about a Zimbabwe that we want, a prosperous Zimbabwe, a democratic Zimbabwe, a Zimbabwe that respects the rights of the people. Yeah, so I'm full-time into politics.
Are we going to be seeing you contesting for the upcoming elections at whatever level?
Well, it's not so much about positions. We are in politics to serve. Yeah, but wherever I am deployed, I'm a servant of the people who are able to say no.
One of you, I'm not so sure who it was, amongst the two of you, with either you or Tunga, wrote a very long letter to the president that we saw. Was it you or is the other one? Is your colleague?
Oh, it's me. I wrote actually more than one letters to the president.
The president divulged one of those letters, a very powerful letter that I personally also was privileged to see. You spoke of high spirits and encouragement to someone who is out there, yet you are the ones that are in there. What drives you to have such a conviction of encouraging those that are much more free than we thought you were? I just wanted to understand exactly what was going on in your mind when you were drafting such a politically charged and powerful letter.
Well, the fact that we were in prison does not necessarily mean that we were the only people who were facing difficulties and suffering. Every Zimbabwean was in his own share of struggles. So we just put ourselves at the same level with everyone. So in that context, we are able to also encourage others, even who were outside. It is in that context that I wrote those letters to President Nelson Chamisa.
Kukena nina chamisa kukena nikena kukena nina chamisa